My dad used to build power lines, so when I was a kid, we were the family that never stayed in one place long. I have lived in motel rooms, trailer parks, and one old Victorian-style house across 16 states, all before I was 10. Due to the general isolation I grew up in, I was close with my cousin, another little brinker, although her parents settled down about 6 years before we did. After the attacks on 9/11, my dad took a job at home, and we settled down into the small-town life. My grandmother always said that if Papa died before she did, she would eat her way through Italy. But after moving from a dangerous city in California to a ghost town in Kansas, she decided she didn't want to wait anymore. So, 3 generations of sisters went on a 3-week trip to Italy. The Duomo in Milan was the first thing we saw when we came out of the metro, and it was a truly magnificent sight. We visited Florence, where we explored the markets, met up with a former exchange student who took us on an adventure across the city. On the way to her house, we witnessed flag throwing in a square before enjoying a traditional Italian dinner with her family. We stopped in Pisa for a day before heading to Palermo, Sicily. We toured the city and spent most of the day at the beach, soaking up the sun and the Mediterranean Sea. From there, we flew to Naples, spent the entire day exploring the ruins of Pompeii, and experienced the phenomenal pizza in the city it was born in. After arriving in Rome, we explored the neighbors surrounding the Trevi Fountain, only a few blocks from where we were staying. We walked around the Vatican City, journeyed through a maze, and piled into an overcrowded room to see the Sistine Chapel, toured the Galleria Borghese and its beautiful garden, and rode the metro to find the Spanish Steps before stopping into Babington's Tea to my sister's delight. Wanderlust can be a driving force. Over the next 2 years, I flew to Orlando, Florida, just in time to sit with my friends through Hurricane Irma, and visited a previous home in Killeen, Texas. October of 2018, my family in Kansas met up with family from California in New Orleans for my grandparents' 50th anniversary. We made our way to Bay St. Louis, Mississippi to fish and catch up before heading to Gulfport to check out the CB Museum and see where our grandparents had lived when they got engaged. Unfortunately, we couldn't enter the museum without a military escort, and most of the artifacts had been moved to California after a flood. We hit the beach in Pensacola, Florida before heading back to Mississippi, but not before stopping at a famous seafood market. A couple days later, we went back to Louisiana and spent the rest of the week in New Orleans. We attended the School of Cooking, visited the New Orleans Museum of Art, explored the French Quarter, and ate amazing food. We fell in love with the city, even though we only saw a small part of it. After all this traveling with my family, I decided to go on a trip by myself. I spent a year and a half paying for a 2-week trip to Greece, where I joined up with a tour group, and we hopped around the islands. We had local guides for several activities, like hiking up to the Acropolis and exploring the archaeological site of Knossos. With a local tour director at our side the entire time, we really got to look into the lives of Greeks. We witnessed the performance of an old-fashioned wedding celebration in Santorini, climbed a volcano, jumped off cliffs just off of Paros, fell in love with gyros and Greek cuisine. We bonded over the vast differences in our cultures, missing our families, and yet we're still happy to be with each other on this trip. I arrived back home sweating out a fever, but hungry to go again, determined to make traveling a permanent fixture in my life. In my opinion, there's no better way to experience another country, another culture, than to jump in and immerse yourself in it for a little while.